Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once more to Malifaux. Make yourselves comfortable, settle in, try the wine and those little things on the sticks. They're very good. And let me talk you through a game where my Lilith met Gitli's Victorias. And I'm warning you now, for those with a weak constitution, this game started off visceral and ended in a bit of an abattoir, with something of a bloodbath in the middle. And some of the more astute viewers might be able to spot why, just from this deployment picture. But don't worry, all will be explained. First, let's talk terrain. We've got our usual dense height 5 forests. This is a big block of impassable height like 8 terrain. Climbable height 3 rock. Climbable height 1 rock. Climbable severe height 1 bushes. And a big piece of severe hazardous terrain. Because I like hazardous terrain and I think more boards should have some. I chose this corner as my deployment zone, because it's got a nice lovely giant piece of cover, and I'm sitting on this side of the table. This corner would clearly have been the best, but I'm not that much of a bastard. So I've got a Terratot placed here because I don't know where he's going to put his sniper, but I figured if he placed it over here somewhere then Lilith could be luring it in. Primordial magic behind these trees, because I was going to go behind the rock, but then it's height 1, and again the sniper worries me. And you know where you are with the tree. Lilith. Doppelganger with 1,000 faces, Lilith with Beckon Malifaux and Summon the Blood. Blackblood Shaman, Nakima with True Mother and another Terratot. My opponent has got, and sorry for the retina-searing white board, we drew the short straw table tonight. Anyway, as I was saying, Gitli has brought a performer, Victoria of Ashes, Victoria of Blood. Ashes has Sister in Spirit, Synchronized Slaying, and Sisters in Fury, whilst Blood has Mark of Shezui and Oathkeeper. Winged Plague, Johan with Oathkeeper, because you know Outcasts like to keep their promises. Almost as much as guilds, stupid Queeg. Big Jake, Frycore Trapper on the Rock, that was a good spot, and Malifaux Child. So my plan, well tonight I finally got round to trying out my Blackblood Bomber crew. And really my main priority is seeing if I can get the Blackblood Shaman to do something, anything, to convince me he's not a shitbag model. And this has sort of influenced my deployment because I'm trying to keep him as safe as possible, so Nakima's blocking line of sight to him from this way and Lilith's blocking line of sight to him this way. As a result I'm kind of bunched up behind this terrain, which might be important, I'll let you decide, for determining how the events of the game unfolded. My opponent declared Outcasts, which almost made me let out a little bit of wee. If he'd gone Von Schill, Frycore, I might have had to flip the table, but thankfully he didn't. So I'm going to try to give this Black Blood theme a good go. I feel my crew is particularly strong when bunching up in a particular area of the board, sucking in my opponent's crew and doing massive amounts of irresistible damage, which is good for the strategy. I can go out wide on the wings with the Terratots, but I prefer to get them in the centre and just have as many bodies bleeding on everyone as I can. And really the crew revolves around Nakima getting stuck in, bleeding on some lower wound models to kill them, and summon a Terratot, which can then be Blackblood bombed by Lilith or the Doppelganger, copying the Blackblood Shaman or the Blackblood Shaman himself, using Doppelganger and Lilith to prevent my opponent's models from pulling outside of Blackblood range, and using the deaths of Tots and enemy models to help push my Nephilim into combat as well, with using the Blackblood Shaman's abilities there, which I actually feel could be more useful than I've so far given them credit. So that's essentially what I feel my crew can do. Let's have a look at his crew. The first thing I notice is that the Victorias have got very little healing. I think only the child can actually do a healing flip. And no one's got Survivalist, which I couldn't quite believe and had to keep asking my opponent at certain points during the game, because I was sure it was going to jump out and surprise me somewhere. But no. So apart from the manipulative on the performers, this crew looks paper thin, and I think I can take it. What I should have paid more attention to is why. The Viks are made for alpha striking, and that's just what they do. And the build my opponent is taking is set to maximise that. His goal is to wreck my crew in a single all-or-nothing strike. And now I know this, but my first game was against the Viks, but that was like 54 games ago, so I don't quite respect this as much as I should. However, it is a no-brainer that the Vic of Blood is going to be the frame for murder target. which means Nakima's got to try her best not to, well, Nakima and Lilith have got to try their best not to bleed on her, and my best bet is probably to try to finish her with the doppelganger. This makes choosing one of my schemes easy because if Nakima lives, he loses his entire crew, that's for sure. So he's going to need to take her down, which means frame for murder's going on her. We're both so original. So I've noticed my opponent has got a lot of Don't Mind Me in his crew, the two performers, and Big Jake. Big Jake has it too, which tells me that there's some scheme markers are coming. With my opponent's deployment, I wondered if he was going to go for Leave Your Mark with, perhaps with the Wing Plague trying to come around behind. I was going to try to lure him in, but Convict Labour's so easy. In flank deployment, he'd be a fool not to take that. I could try similar with my crew, but the performers are so good at removing scheme markers and pulling stuff away from where they want to be. I think Leave Your Mark would have been the better bet. As I said, I want to be in the middle with all my black blood bodies. So that leaves Hunting Party and Entourage. I could do Hunting Party, but given I'm going to try to kill most things with the Shaman and Lilith's black blooding abilities, postural abilities, Entourage is the safer bet, especially given how close the deployment zone is in flank deployment. So yeah, hopefully that gets across my thought process. Let's get on with the game. Turn 1. Right, I think we should just take a moment to appreciate this control hand. Have you ever seen anything more beautiful? I don't think you have. This goes beyond embarrassingly good. Even I'm starting to get suspicious of me, and I might have to force my opponents to cut my deck. Suffice to say, I'm pretty confident going into this turn. I give the Victorias the first activation, the Malifaux Child goes, uses Just Like You to copy the Sisters in Fury from the Vic of Ashes, which gives, I think, both of them, in fact, all Sisters in play. Gosh, that's horrible. +2 on their damage flips for melee attacks. I wiggle the Primordial Magic, the Trapper shoots at the tot, but misses because he's trying to preserve good cards for his Alpha Strike, and so the top moves up over to here. I think it's a bit of mistaken placement. What I was thinking was I was trying to put him out of range of the performers, being able to walk up and then Siren Call him closer. But as it turns out, my opponent had better things to do with them, and all I've done is put him in sight of the sniper without any cover. You can see one of the performers has hopped the bush and then Siren called Ashes to come stand by her. It occurs to me that that's a push action and that's climbable terrain, so Ashes should stop when she contacts it. But fuck it. We normally just play these things as Height 1 Severe, so I'm retroactively making it that. The other performer goes and Siren calls Blood over the hedge. And look at that placement, that's just perfect. It's so perfect, it's probably a trap. But I just can't resist, and plus I'm running low on activation, so it's the Teratot's time. He sprints and fails, he sprints and fails, and I'd have to cheat in my Nine of Masks because I really need this position and get him here. The Black Blood Shaman's already activated and given Doppelganger Black Blood and tried to pustule Nakima to give us some positive goodness, but he failed. But Lilith is more than in range and more than happy to use all 3 AP to Black Blood pustule the Teratot, which will do 6 damage irresistibly to the performers, which will kill him, and 6 damage to Blood, who I presume will Soulstone, and suck out a ton of resources. The Teratot will still be alive on 1 wound to road block Blood, and I'm so excited I could squeal like a little girl. Sadly, I don't live the dream. Ashes goes, she just walks around here, uses the Synchronized Slaying ability to give all Sisters a positive to their attack flip, and then uses the Sisters in Spirit ability to whisk Blood away from my Teratot to stand over here. If I hadn't got greedy, and if I'd placed the Tot over here to engage Ashes, I don't think I could have engaged her even if I'd pushed up as close as I could over here. Maybe I could have. But yeah, being here might have forced Ashes to waste an AP either trying to get away from the Teratot or killing it, which would have slowed the Sisters down by 1 AP and may have made the difference. As it was, they broke out without problems, and Ashes accomplices to Blood, which makes me cry. And Blood moves over to here, pops Oath Keeper, moves over to here, and you can see my opponent's using dummy bases to check his ranges and placements beforehand, which is super good. I really recommend doing this. So yeah, Blood pops Oathkeeper, uses the first AP to walk over to here so she can get a charge line to engage as many of my models as possible, and she charges Nakima. A melee action with the whirlwind trigger does some heavy damage to Nekima, who stones. Brings down the motherfucking shaman with one hit. Are you fucking kidding me? And I think he also almost cuts the doppelganger in half. The next two attacks bring down Nekima, and I don't think I'm bothering to stone or cheat high cards anymore, as I know the inevitable when I see it sometimes. I score 3 points for Frame for Murder, and surprisingly the doppelganger stays standing because he can't get through the manipulative. Thank all the imaginary friends. Okay, that was harsh. And now what I'd really like to do is use Lilith to kill both of these performers with my tot. And probably that's what I should have done. But I'm worried that if I don't kill Blood this turn, that's game over. So I decide to use my great cards that I've preserved. The doppelganger mimics Blood, getting the trigger, and chops it into salami. And my opponent scores 2 points for Frame for Murder. Johann charges and kills the tot, that was sad. And yeah, given I had the doppelganger for initiative flip advantage, I wonder if I shouldn't have just black-blooded these two. Oh well. Lilith wastes her activation moving over to here to cover and trying to beckon one of the performers. Luckily I fail, because Lilith goes. Tangle shadows one of the performers and puts her in the ground, and then I move up over to here and put down my forests here. And I like this. I've taken a pretty heavy blow, but I think this is asking my opponent some difficult questions. Lilith's holding down Ashes and the performer, and is outside of their engagement ranges. I've broken line of sight between Johann and the performer, so the performer can't pull Johann over to be able to hit Lilith with a flurry. Lilith is going to kill Ashes unless he does something drastic, and the doppelganger is actually threatening a counter-punch if anything strays too far towards the centre. Incidentally, I blocked line of sight to the trapper on Lilith, and he can't see the doppelganger around the side there, I don't think. We go into turn 2 and the game picks up the pace. We both stone for cards. My opponent wins the initiative, I think with the red joker, I can't remember. And he knows he's got to do something with Ashes, so she activates, moves over here to out of Lilith's line of sight and to look at Johann, and strikes at Lilith who, because Ashes has gone earlier than she'd like, she hasn't got all the nice buffs up, and I cheat and make sure Lilith survives. Ashes then accomplices to Johann, who pops his Oathkeeper, walks around here and flurries Lilith to death. I accept her fate and don't bother cheating, because her death was accepted as soon as I put her in the middle of the enemy crew. But things have worked out pretty much as well as I could have hoped, as now both the big threat models have activated in the centre, and it's time for Retribution. Retribution gets off to a slow start. Doppelganger walks around, mimics Johann with the trigger, and then attacks. Ashes missing one attack, and then hitting a weak or a moderate which got soulstoned. A bit disappointed if I'm honest. The performer takes the opportunity to move over to the terrain and drop a scheme marker, and trying to be annoying by disrupting Lilith's charge, but it doesn't work. Lilith walks over here into the forest, uses sudden darkness, and then charges through into Ashes. Minimum damage 4 on I think she's got like 5 wounds left, and no survivalists. Yes, please. However, my opponent soulstones like a champion, and Ashes is left standing on 1 wound remaining with no soulstones. Let's keep these stakes high, shall we? I then stick my forests over here to protect the Terratop when he makes his run in. In hindsight, they probably would have been better like here to protect Lilith from the performer a little bit, or just over here to protect us all from the sniper. But the Terratop is the only thing that can help Lilith score some points in the centre, and I'm desperate to try to keep it alive, and I'm worried that Big Jake can charge it or throw axes or some shit. The Terratop makes his run for it, fails both sprints because I cannot flip a mask when I need to, so I can't get into range to block this marker, but I do get to engage Ashes, which means if she wants to leave Black Blood range she has to take a disengaging strike, and any damage to Lilith or the top will kill her. Best I could do. At the end of the turn, Big Jake and the Wing Plague gets more markers down, and my opponent scores Convict Labour, and we both score a point for Extraction, and the marker moves over here. Turn 3, that's a good hand. All I need is the initiative. For one of the terms in this game, I think it might be in the previous turn, but we'll say it's this turn for drama. We both flipped a 4 and then had to reflip, and both flipped a 4 again and had to reflip. Oh, how we laughed. But in the end, the initiative is mine! And chop! Ashes joins her sister. Chop, chop! Johann joins the sisters. Fuck you, hard to kill, and thank you, Red Joker. I move the trees to here to stop the sniper and keep. I need to try to keep Lilith healthy. Performer gets a marker over here, Primordial runs around and the Winged Plague dropped another marker, I think. And I really debated this. I could try to keep my Terratot safe. Presumably the best thing to do would be to move up by these markers and then go defensive. Or I could risk it and try to take down Big Jake. 2 moderate damages would be enough to kill him and prevent my opponent from scoring points. And he might kill my tot anyway, so yep, we go for it. Sadly, I'm only able to do 1 damage to him. He then beats the tot like it's his job, and I now can't score for the strategy. So I probably should have gone defensive. Sniper then jinks over to just draw a tiny bead on Lilith and misses the shot. Gitli gets another point for convict labour and another point for extraction because this guy, this pain in the ass, counts as 2 on his own. What a dickwart. We go to turn 4 and what can I say, guys? I am the king of the control hand. If only I played well enough to use it properly. I actually lose the initiative and the performer tries to be a total dickhead, casting Siren's Call at Lilith twice, both times with the Paralyze trigger. I think you know where my 12 and my red joker went. So now this is my opponent asking me difficult questions. I could try to kill Big Jake and stop him scoring, but if that performer is alive in the last turn, it can pull me out of entourage position and I'm just not having it. So Lilith ends the performer and then walks towards the deployment zone, putting down her forests to protect her from the trapper. And I've been slowly scooting my primordial magic over here in the hopes of maybe making someone insignificant and keeping him out of range of the trapper. But I decide to move him back around here for goodness knows why. And seeing what I'm evidently trying to do, my opponent tries to bundle Lilith with all the models he can. The Outcasts score 2 points and the Neverborn score nothing. Turn 5, a much more reasonable hand. Lilith gets the initiative, and so we've discovered that she was actually already in the Outcast deployment zone. I was preparing to have to go defensive and then try to break out. Using the 2 soulstones I have left for masks for the disengage, I think I probably would have got away with that. But as it turns out, I didn't need to, so I decided to kill all the little people. Trapper went down to a few good whacks, and then I red joker the Winged Plague into the grave. Lilith was not cool with what the Viks did to her little sister. And my fucking shaman. My fucking shaman. The whole reason I took this crew in the first place. Makes me sick. And that, my friends, is the end of the game. What a massacre. We were each left with 2 models apiece. But for the final scores, the Victorious scored 4 points for extraction thanks to Big frickin' Jake in his big frickin' weight class. And if you're wondering why I didn't kill him, the idea that he comes back at the end of the game significant and unslowed if he's killed before turn 5 really made it just not seem worth it. The Viks scored 3 points for convict labour and 2 points for frame for murder, whilst Neverborn scored 1 point for extraction, 3 points for frame for murder and 3 points for entourage. Let's be honest, there was nothing covert about it, making this game 9-7 to the Victorias, and what a blast of a game. Oh my goodness, the Victorias are mean, I'd forgotten. My opponent and I had a really great chat after the game, and he's a very good player, knows his stuff, and so I'm very grateful that he would share his advice. And I know the Victorias often give people a bit of a hard time, so I'm going to talk about some of the things I've learned about how to deal with them. Numero uno. Games against the Viks are pretty much won and lost on the deployment. True in most games of Malifaux, but especially profound when it comes to the Victorias. They exist to hit you so hard in the first turn that you can't recover, and the way they do this is with Victoria of Blood and Whirlwind. Minimum damage 5, ignoring pretty much every defensive trait in the game, plus flips to damage and probably plus flips to the attack. You are going to lose models, my friend, and how many models decides the game. If the Viks player has got a Student, Sisters in Spirit, and Oathkeeper, Victoria of Blood can hit you from like 29 inches away with 3 attacks. In the case of my opponent's crew that he's using here, I think he can do it 2 attacks at 24 inches, something like that. It's very hard to deny them the strike. The simplest defense is to spread your crew out. Having just over 5 inches between each of your models will dramatically cut the amount of damage you can do. But I don't think of this as really very practical advice, because we don't play on empty boards and terrain will tend to funnel models together where it's hard to keep those kind of spaces. And often your crew will have synergies that will stop working at those kind of ranges, and if you're managing to do that, your opponent won't care about getting the killer strike, because then they're completely controlling the game. Basically what I'm saying is deploy spread out if you can, don't court more risk than you need to, but it's going to take more than that, and anybody who tells you, oh, just spread out, has disqualified themselves from your further attention. So what else can you do? Well, apparently, a big factor for the Viks is activations. Apparently, by around activation 4, the Vik slingshot machinery is starting to engage. If you can try to wait that out without presenting a suitable target, for example by using the blocking cover, or simply by hanging back at ranges that is eating into their attack actions, then it's likely going to start to be giving them some problems. Along a similar line of thinking, it's perfectly okay to just walk backwards and maintain those ranges. And you could possibly combine this with setting up a juicy target, letting the machinery, the blood delivery machinery start to get engaged, and then get it out of the way. Alternatively, just leave it there. Leave Nekima sitting right in Blood's firing line. Dare her to come out and attack her, but make sure you're positioned for the counter-punch. Once Blood is down, you can start to play a normal game. And if you can keep one of your big beaters standing, the rest of the Vik player's crew can often be quite fragile. This game was a bit of an extreme example, but you can see that Lilith ate the rest of the crew single-handed pretty much. Now I'm sure other Vik crews will have a tougher second wave, but they have got to do scheming as well. And I hope this game showed that despite the rest of the crew's, somewhat fragility, it was enough for my opponent to use to pull out the win. Now that may sound like I'm advising just giving control to the opponent, like hanging back, deploying really far on the back line, moving up very cautiously in the first turn, which is pretty much giving the opponent the field. Well, I think the Viks are something of a special case. I think they're actually one of the most balanced forces I've seen in a game. If they get that initial blow, they'll probably win, but if they don't get it, then they'll probably lose. And that's a restriction that they're limited by, and you can use to control them by playing the cagey dance, as they really can't afford to let you hit them first, which why I imagine having a good range game is probably good against the Viks. I'm sure there's a plan B, probably involving the synchronising of dragons, as the forces tiptoe slowly near to each other, if that's how the game goes. But there's a reason why that seems to be plan B, and I'd suggest that's because as the bodies of the two crews get closer and closer together, at least between melee-orientated crews, the edge the Viks have decreases. Well, those are my thoughts on taking on the Viks anyway. If you've got your own opinions or experience or disagree with me, put them down in the comments. I'm sure people will be interested to read them. But as it stands, that was the game, and what a cracking game that was. I got really much luckier than I should have. But man, what a massacre. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care.